Well, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and today an interesting headline from the New York Times came out. Are we talking about mental health too much? We're going to be touching on that a little bit later, and the overall state of mental health. And here to look into this with more detail, the Vice President and Chief Medical Officer for Behavioral Health at WellSpan, Dr. Kenneth Rogers. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yes, so just first to start talking about the overall state of mental health, it feels like we are talking about mental health more than we ever have. It's more mainstream than it's ever been, but there's also a perception that the well-being of some folks are deteriorating. Is that just a feeling, or are there facts, clinical evidence to back up those feelings?
Absolutely. One of the things that we know is immediately post-COVID, we saw the need for behavioral health skyrocket. There was a lot of stress, a lot of people knew they needed to get into care, especially kids. And so there was a huge need that people understood very, very quickly. As we've kind of moved post-COVID, things have kind of settled out. There's still a need there, but then more recently there's been this increased stress, whether it's political pressures, economic pressures, financial pressures, community pressures. We're starting to see that those needs actually go up again. Yeah. And so we're starting to see a real skyrocket in mental health needs.
Well, when you talk about kids, I mean, and talk about folks who need help when it comes to mental health, when did that shift happen, especially with younger people?
Kids have always needed mental health care. Yeah. It's always been there. But with COVID, you saw so many kids out of school, not seeing their friends, not having those natural kind of supports that were there previously, they kind of went away very quickly. And so kids were at home in many times stressful situations. And so you saw a lot of kids really find themselves being more depressed, more anxious, and not being able to engage in sports and after school activities and all those extracurriculars that kids really depend on for their mental health care.
Yeah, let's talk about that New York Times article we brought up a little bit earlier that suggests that we're talking too much about mental health. There's a quote that it may be causing harm for those who are not as bad off as they perceive. What are your thoughts on those findings?
I think people cope in many, many different ways. I think there's many ways to parse that article out. So we have what's called the medicalization of, normalcy. And so what you tend to see are people that really talk a lot more about, you need to get in care because I just broke up with my significant other as a 13-year-old. Most of us know in a few days that's going to go away. And so there's kind of natural things that will happen. That's not a kid that necessarily needs to go into therapy, but we've found ourselves to a point where there's lots of talking about it. On the other hand, sometimes we hear young people say, I'm feeling really depressed, I'm feeling really down, I'm thinking about hurting myself. And people will blow it off. When in essence, most kids and most adults that are actually going to die by suicide really tell somebody it's going to happen, but most of the time people aren't listening. So I think it's really a double-edged sword. Sometimes I think there are areas where we may talk about it too much. There are other areas where we may not talk about it enough.
So paying attention, though, still is key overall.
Paying attention and asking questions.
Yeah, and there is a quote from that article that says, large-scale mental health interventions should school districts, or I should say, let me go back here, the article addressed mental health programs in schools and advised school leaders they should take caution with, quote, large-scale mental health interventions. So should school districts take a closer look at what they're implementing, or if they are even implementing any mental health tactics for students?
I think the best school districts out there are really looking at primary prevention. So how can we actually prevent mental health issues from occurring? And that's having a healthy school district. Things like no bullying policies, trying to make sure kids are engaged in lots of activities where there are supportive interventions happening. That's really primary mental health prevention. I think what the article is really looking at is, as you're thinking about more getting in, digging into, are you depressed? Tell me about your depression symptoms, etc. Sometimes you find asking lots of questions about those things, sometimes getting kids to a point where they feel like they have to say something's going on when there really may not be.
So how much does technology play a role in this? When you're talking about live gaming, screen time, social media, is that one of the root causes of some of our struggles with mental health in the culture currently?
I think that if I could get rid of cell phones, sometimes I would. But on the other hand, cell phones can be very beneficial. So if you look at the amount of screen time that kids are using, we don't engage with our families nearly as much. We don't engage with our families, friends, all those healthy things that we used to do, going outside for a walk, playing with others, etc. But on the other hand, what you see are a lot more apps really geared toward trying to make sure kids are healthy. Things like learning how to meditate, learning how to relax. Yeah. There are a lot of things that, kids are online looking at different ways of kind of thinking about how do I decrease my stress.
So we don't always have to be used by technology, but technology can be used to actually help our mental health.
Absolutely. Technology, it has been a real game changer, especially as we've moved through the pandemic.
And the biggest thing for anybody watching out there, what are 5 practical steps that people can take to better their mental health every day, just on the daily? If someone's watching and want to do that, what are those steps?
First thing I'd say is get outside and get some sunshine. We know sunshine, vitamin D, very much needed. Getting outside, getting some sunshine is important. Actually taking a walk, getting some exercise, moving, actually getting the endorphins and enkephalins in your brain to kind of kick in. Friendships. We know friendships, if you look at Blue Zone studies, which have been around for many, many years, we know friendships actually lengthen our lives and make our lives a lot more wonderful. Being involved in community organizations, whether it's religious services or whether it's community-based organizations that you get into, trying to figure out how do we actually get involved with others and getting around. And I'd say the other thing is to think about what we're eating. So a lot of times if we find ourselves with really bad diets, there's a lot more information recently that says that our gut health actually affects how we feel. Wow. So gut health affects depression. So if we can find ourselves eating healthy meals, getting sunshine, getting out and walking, having friends, it's going to move us to a very different place.
It sounds like a recipe for success. Dr. Kenneth Rogers, thank you so much for coming in. We greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And again, if you know anyone who is struggling with mental health out there, you can reach out to any of those contacts on the screen right here and know that you are not alone.